Hello, everybody. I'll be your mediator for the day. I've done lots of jobs in my life. I'm a recording engineer, producer, parolier, lyricist, as we say in English. I've traveled all over the world doing my job with lots of different people. I did a lot of work in the advertising business back in the 80s. I worked for Adele in London, recording Hans Zimmer and people like this. Had a privilege to do a lot of advertising music at the time, and then moved on into record production, which is basically my main area. Anyway, I've now added mediator to the jobs that I've done in my life, and in particular talking about Brazil and what all you people do respectively. I've got a number of questions to ask you all, and just a quick introduction is that obviously it's a market which has expanded incredibly in the last 10 years. Brazil itself, now 215 million people, I think, and one of the expanding economies of the country, of the world. So obviously there's a lot of market potential, especially as we've now got internet and the way of communicating between all of us around the world, and the ways of exchanging music and licensing music and streaming music in different formats and putting music to images. MTV changed a lot of things, funnily enough. In England, first of all, when I was a young boy, we had the BBC in England, one television channel, which then became 4 television channels. And now most people have 40 television channels, and most of those are commercial. So most of them have jingles or films constantly, and most of those need music of one sort or another. So it's an area which has exploded in every kind of way. Producing music used to be exclusively something we did in studios with big budgets and a lot of money to spend and using real musicians. Now, of course, everyone can do it at home. Everyone can program music. You can make music on your telephone if you want, which could be used for publicity eventually. So the market's completely opened up, which has made it ferociously competitive and at the same time very creative and very fluid as well. So I think it's good to open the door between countries like France and Brazil to see what exchange can be done, what questions can be asked, and how we can develop the rapport between the two territories. So I'll leave you to introduce yourselves one at a time. Maybe Claudia, because you're at the top of the screen, you can start and tell us a little bit about the job that you do. And
Hi.
hi there. Right, but we're all here. We're listening.
Bonjour.
Ah, formidable.
Euh, bon, je suis productrice. Je fais. It's better to talk in English or French.
I imagine French for this particular public, but yes, yeah, because you
But
can.
then my colleagues here won't understand me.
Exactly. So
Maybe.
yeah, let's keep it in English then. No, okay, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Um, so I'm a producer. I've been working as executive producer, line producer, in many capacities since I started in 1997. So 25 years ago, going to 26. So I've worked in a lot of films and TV series during my career. And when I started, I worked for 10 years at O2 Films, which is a big production company here, and one of the biggest here in Brazil. And I worked there since City of God. And City of God was, I think, the first project that I was really involved in music, in the post-production process, because I was not part of the shooting when I started. The post-production was beginning, so it was the first time that I dealt with licensing of music, dealing with composers. I was an assistant executive producer, and I worked a lot in it. So, and since then, I've done and I take care also of the shooting. So, as a line producer or executive producer during the shooting of the films, but I did for many years, and many of the films that I did, I also worked during the entire post production. So all the process regarding hiring composers and musical supervision and licensing of music and etc. I've done this in a lot of projects. It's true that today the market is very different, especially because of the entering of those streaming platforms. I also worked for 2 years as a director of physical production for Netflix Brazil. So I was on the other side of the of the counter, and I remember it was right when Netflix began to when they opened their offices here in Brazil and they started the international offices. Brazil was one of the first ones. And then there was a discussion. Maybe Berna and Mario. Berna certainly knows a lot about this. It's the musicians and composers fighting for the rights because the streaming platforms normally they do like a buyout, and in many cases even of the connect the how to say the connection do como é que é direitos conexos de
Rights,
execução pública.
Neighboring rights.
Neighboring rights, yes, exactly. So then there was like this big discussion here that it was not my area because it is normally business and legal affairs that deal with this inside the companies. But and I also I've been business and legal affairs for many years before that for O2 Films. So I have experience in this side. So I didn't actively participate on those discussions, but I remember being close to them and also listening because I know a lot of composers, musicians here, and they would call me directly to fight for things that it wasn't my job, but so I was close to this. So maybe I can contribute to the discussion here from the production side because that's my area.
Okay, thank you very much, Claudia. That's a good resume of what you've done. Let's move physically to the right-hand side here, and we'll talk to you, Flavia. Maybe you could do the same thing. Just tell us a little bit about your work.
Hi, bonjour, good morning. So my name is Flavia Cesar. I am director of licensed film, commercial, and new business at Warner Chappell Brazil. I've been working at Warner Chappell for almost 23 years. So I passed through all departments here at the publishing side. So with all the experience that I've had in about the company catalog, this experience opening my eyes to the synchronization market and the lack of specialized professionals. Of course, we have here my partners, Juliana and Mario, but they are still few in Brazil. And many times we did the work of music supervision here at Warner Chappell by our heart. So last year we decided to start to study more, to be deep inside the universe of the music supervision. We did several projects. We did the first season of the City Dome for Amazon Prime as music supervisors, and a lot of projects before Dome. Recently, we did we did a project with Netflix, the series Só Se For Por Amor. We have 18 songs there and 2 songs tailor-made for the series. And of course, we fight against the buyout because we are in the side of to protect our composers and to try the best fees for them. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Juliana, somebody's got a call. It's not Michael Jackson. Juliana, it's your turn.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Bonjour.
Sadly, this will be all the extent of my French today.
That's good.
I'm sorry.
That's all we need.
But I'm a music supervisor in Global. I've been in this role for the last 5 years. I've worked before in both an indie record label, Biscoito Fino, in A&R, and I've worked in Sony Music Brazil in marketing. So I've had these experiences in the music industry before, and but I'm very happy to be in this size of the industry for the last 5 years because I'm very passionate about this subject and what I do. So I'm very pleased to be here with you today to discuss more about it. Um, so in my job today, I'm currently responsible for selecting the the songs for the soundtracks of series and telenovelas, which are um, I'd say perhaps Global's treasures for the last 50 years. Um, and also, I supervise a team of composers. We have about 25 composers currently working for us with the original soundtracks. Um, and that's it. I've talked before about this with Flavia, with Mario, and it's always very nice to see them and to talk to them and exchange. So thank you for the invite, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Okay, Berna, no more phone calls, I assume. Yeah, maybe. Hi. Nice studio. Tell us about yourself.
I'm Berna. I've been working in music for visuals since 30 years. I started producing music for uh, record labels, and then I moved to audiovisuals. Uh, I started to make television programs at first. Then right after, I started to compose music for a dance company, one of the one of the most outstanding choreographers in Brazil, Deborah Coker, and I've been doing her soundtracks for the shows since 30 years. I stopped it like right before the pandemic, so the last show I didn't. And I've worked with her also in the Cirque du Soleil. We did a soundtrack for one show, Oval, and like I'm searching to live, so I changed. It's okay. The path is this. I need to go there and there, and like but mostly doing composing, but also directing, producing, whatever. But yes, as my colleagues are talking about, recently we had a great change in the industry because the just three categories of work give rights in audiovisuals, in movies or whatever, which is director, script, and music. But the money, the neighborhood rights, they are paying by the exhibitor, who puts the material on the air. And this is a old global problem because global also, as Juliana told us, produce the soundtracks and at the exhibitor as well. So, but now they realize that money involved on this, like because if you are the record label, now if you want the rights, if you pay for the recordings, you
Mm.
can collect after as well, even if you are paying for it.
That's right.
So
That's
it's
right.
a money back.
Right.
And Netflix went in Brazil with a very aggressive attitude, and like trying to put the buyout as a standard, and like start several movements around the world, including your music, your future, which is a global one, and I'm part of it. I didn't accept and still not accepting this buyout contracts, which is very complicated, and trying to do my best. But at some point, Netflix realized also then quality is very important, and we did a kind of group here, like people who are in music business doing scores for movies, etc. And we said for us, okay, we'll not accept. We'll not accept. Then also, of course, like a young guy will come needing more credits than money, and we'll accept. Now here we call fura olho. Sorry,
Well, you
but
can
it's
imagine what that
normal.
means. Yeah.
It's normal, but then Netflix kind of tropicalize her office here and put some people, uh, Brazilian people, to deal with this. And now Netflix have the best deals
Yeah.
comparing to Sony, comparing to Amazon. Dawn, I've been working with Breno Silveira. I did several big hits movies in Brazil since 2000s, and I've always worked with, now he passed away, Breno Silveira, a great director, and he has, okay, come on, let's do Dawn with me. But Sony's, they are too aggressive, too aggressive. But put your money, ask for your money. It's a buyout, and see what happens. My phone never rings back.
Huh, you're right.
I, I gave them my money, but they never call back.
Yeah.
So, and this is complicated, but like I'm pretty happy what I've been doing. I'm thinking also we are facing a great new change. Next, the next movement will be AI. We have several softwares still running, like you can pretty much tell tag if the tag system, you can tell them, tell
Right.
it like, okay, the mood, blah blah blah,
That's
the
right.
time length, and they build something for you,
Yeah.
right free.
Yeah. Sure.
So
Sure.
that's the next.
No, well, there's
Yeah,
this phantom in the music business called the MIDI chord pack, where you buy MIDI chords which make an immediate hit for you. But if you look at the
yeah,
search engines for big publishers like Universal Publishing or BMG, there's a cascade of different keywords where you can go sad, soft, angry,
yeah.
mandolin, flamenco, anything you want,
Uh,
tempos, and you can cascade down through this search engine and it will throw things back at you that quite often
yeah,
correspond exactly to what you're looking for. So obviously artificial intelligence is going to take a huge place. The only thing that it can't do, particularly in the world of music supervising, I imagine, is the psychology between the director, the musician,
yeah,
the composer, and everything else, where there's much more of a human factor involved in actually
definitely.
understanding and a degree of seduction as well in terms of sales and bringing people into the world of that particular style of music. It's interesting in the fact that, as I understand it, about 60-70% of the music produced in Brazil for publishing and for advertising, etc., is local music. It'll be Latin, Brazilian style music, and apparently it's about 30% of the content that relies on international market. Earlier in the day, we were talking about different styles of covering international material. You know, but lots of companies that can't afford the original rights, they'll ask for, well, we want something that sounds like U2, for example, or what it sounds like Michael Jackson or whatever artist you want to name. And that is obviously the sort of area where there can be an international exchange easier than obviously local markets, where if you're making music for an Arab market, I have friends in Dubai that make music for the market in Dubai, and obviously they have to include local elements in the actual arrangements of the songs and things like this in order to sell it to to their clients. And their clients are totally buyout. There's no rights, there's no PRS, there's no Performing Rights Society, there's no SACEM in the Emirates. It's simply a cash deal. You sell your song. just as you were saying, you make a deal, and the best deals you can make are the ones you can afford to lose. But what's interesting about music supervising, I think, is actually the human contact and the dialogue with directors that obviously don't always know exactly what they want, because they're not in that world. It's like two different hemispheres. It's like the difference between a popular musician and a classical musician. They're thinking in different ways, and the essential thing is the dialogue. And obviously, sometimes you need an interpreter, which is, I imagine, in a sense, a music supervisor to put the two people together. Sorry, I'm waffling on. Mario, let's talk to you for a while. Let's hear what you do.
I'm gonna say the same as Juliana. So bonjour.
Bravo.
A little more. Bonjour. Comment allez-vous?
Formidable, formidable.
That's the best I can do. Sorry about that too. So
What a show off.
I'm Mario Dupois in France.
Yeah.
And I am a music supervisor and audio producer. I have this two job descriptions here because in Brazil we have to wear many hats. So as Flavia said, you know, it's a growing industry, it's a big industry, but it's not specialized yet. So job descriptions are not clear enough, and there are no people enough to do the job. What I'm sure is that we have enough talent to do the job. This is why the job is getting done. So I work on a company called Input Post. It's a sound post-production company and a music company at the same time. So we have this privileged seat to have access to the film since the first draft of the script until and up to the sound post-production. So we really work like nose to tail. We really do creative reviews on the scripts. We work choosing the music. We work with the composer to pick the best composer to the best project. We license music. We clear music. We do the music cue sheets. We deliver the deliverables for the network or etc. So we have this not big enough team, but around 40 people to do sound and music. The music team is about 10 people, and we work with a lot of friend composers. Like we partnered up like freelancers, and we have our fixed freelancers as well. So the guys who are with us all day. And our company has 25 years. I'm younger than that, so I'm here for like 16 years. And as Flavia said, I think we are the first or second wave, probably the second wave of music supervisors, me and a handful of people that are trying to push this market. So I can name some. I think there's Patricia Portaro as well, who was one of the first. Gustavo Montenegro, which is a great music supervisor as well. And I use it to throw a conference here in Brazil called Brazil Music Summit, which is like a conference we created to try to spread the word of the music supervision. So I'm kind of the child of my own conference. And we brought music supervisors from France, from UK, from US to give us keynotes, to make speed meetings, pitchings, and stuff like that for Brazilian artists. And there was a lot of results. So everybody was amazed on how many talents and how many good quality music we have in Brazil. And I had this feeling of this being wasted, like with low payments, with bad agreements. And I also had the same feeling from the majors and from the indie labels and publishers that they were wasting their catalog. So they don't have access and they can't work with all the producers and all the production companies at the same time because they also have small teams. So we thought this music supervision figure or job could solve both problems, like try to bring opportunity for artists and try to fulfill the needs of the production companies as well. So I'm definitely learning how to do this. I did like, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 projects so far as a music supervisor, but every day and every project we learn about something new, and we are struggling a lot with the clients because the agreements are becoming more and more aggressive and, to not say indecent, but it's really really sad what's going on with this broadcasters and VODs, and I think production companies are also in between this, so being squeezed by both sides. The composers want to keep their rights, and the clients of the clients want to have more ownership on the music.
Right.
So I think I try to see us as fighting for both sides and trying to make common ground.
Right, but yeah, the market's obviously become ferociously competitive because, as I said earlier, we have access to producing music, which is much open to everybody today, and if they want to get involved in it. But it's as though the market itself is where it was controlled by a certain number of people. It's now fragmented into many pieces and many factors, and it's extremely difficult to build a network which is reliable and constant between people. But what's interesting here is potentially the dialogue between the people that surround me, where there's probably supervisors as well, but there's obviously editors and there's composers and Brazil. Now, as an Englishman, that's not really, it's quite a strange position to be in, but I'll do my best to sort of put you all together. Okay, being English and diplomatic, Gabriel, we have to speak to you now. So, you want to give me some details about what all of us, what you've done, and what your sector is, etc., etc. You're a composer, if I understand correctly. Is that right?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the invite. I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad to meet these other professionals of the area. Very talent talented people and who works on the industry and with different areas also. It's very interesting. Well, my name is Gabriel Ede. Um, I work with music for like 15, 15 years or so. I come from a background that I came from songwriting. I came from songwriting, like from my teenage years. I came from songwriter, bands, etc. I did go to study um, anthropology, sociology, etc. To then turn back to music, and then I studied music in Unicamp. I am graduated there, and since then I'm very okay. Music is my life, and I still work a lot with songwriting. I mean, and composing. I have been in some residencies, composing and working with another people. I have released several records, some of my own um, authorship, like saying, and some of other people. I have working like as a music producer in some alternative and experimental music area. And since like 5, 6, 7 years, 7 years ago, I've started working in theater. I'm working with music in theater, and especially with one company that we are working closely. I'm the musical director there and all the productions. And now there's a play going on in Sesc Piranga that I made the musical direction, and it's very interesting how I got involved with theater, and in a like a couple 3 years ago, I started working with some audiovisual productions, little ones. But how is different to work with music for theater and music for cinema? It's another it's very different because theater, sometimes you have microphones, sometimes you don't have microphones.
Right.
If you don't have microphones, you have to think, okay, how can I put something that won't mess all the understanding of the words, oh, how it's very different because in cinema and audiovisual work, you always will have, you can always, you have the control of the mix. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sure.
You can, oh, okay, I will duck hear the music and I can go with the microphones. In theater, sometimes you have microphones, sometimes you don't have. It's a very different relationship
Sure.
with musician, with the music and the work that is going on in the play,
Of course, yeah.
And I'm trying to be very brief, just to not take a lot of time
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
But I love working this how can you say, with this just with desafio, seria, como é que é a palavra desafio? Perdão?
Challenging.
Challenge, with the challenge that sometimes they're imposed, because every work is a complete different work,
of course.
And I since my songwriting, since the beginning, I always loved. I came from a music background, I say recording, making records, etc. And since the beginning, I always, like a child, I was, oh, okay, I'm hearing like this song, this album. What's going on? How the music spreads here? What is the position of every instrument? How this relates? So this production interest made it's something that it's very alive in me until today. I say I work with mixing also, and for me it's very important to make a good mix, and a mix that translates the intent of the audiovisual work, or even you can say, oh, the record,
Yeah.
because there's a song, there's someone singing. How can you have to make that word, those
That's
words clear,
It's a very good.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Everything have to work together,
Of course. Well, that's one of the thing. I've mixed music for films both in England and in France and in America, and I've noticed one thing in particular is that between the three essential elements that you have in film music, which is the dialogue, the sound effects, the Foley operating, you can call it, and the music, there's often a serious lack of communication between the people that are involved in each particular section. In other words, I've left the studio often with a composer with a fantastic piece of symphonic music which sounds splendid, but when we've actually gone to the premiere of the film and listened to it, he's in tears when we leave the theatre because the door closing or the teacup or anything is louder than the best piece of the music. So it's all about communication on a musical point of view, and also between the different people involved in the production. And that I think that applies to advertising and music as much as it does in cinema, is that there's a correct placement between the elements. As you were saying, it's very much in the mix about how loud the vocal is in terms of what the dynamic is. You've got certain directors like Tarantino, for example, who is a perfect example of somebody who manages to integrate music into his film, and often music which is in total juxtaposition of what the sentiment of the film is. He'll put a very soft, beautiful piece of music against an incredibly violent thing with real efficiency. And the same thing can be exploited in advertising as well, to a certain extent. It's ambitious, but it needs creative thought to be able to do that. All right, well, let's to avoid long dialogues from everybody, which is very interesting for all of us, but we'd be here for a week to find out everything. I suggest that we do a couple like quick rotations like this around each of you, and I'll just throw a couple questions your way and see if we can move ahead a little bit faster. We'll do it in the same order. We'll start with you, Claudia, at the top. So let me think of something. For example, what advice would you give to a French composer who would want to work in the Brazilian market? There's a question. Sorry.
I think the first thing is networking, right? As for almost everything. So knowing the music supervisors, because as Mario said, it's something quite new in the market, but there are some people now for the last years coming into this market, and producers are understanding every time more the role and the benefits of having a music supervisor. I remember when Patricia approached me with that role, and we did a lot of work together. And Flavia may remember Bingo is a good example that I could talk about. But I
Amazing.
think
Yeah.
yeah, and there's a story behind that. I don't know if you know, but and but it is to get in touch with music. Answering your question is to get in touch with music supervisor and also directors, directors, because it is a very of course the music supervisor he will propose. So that there are two things you can come through like having things that you produce to be synced or compose original things. There are two ways to do this. If you want to sell it, let's say sell music that you already have, I like through a label or contacting music supervisors and divulging your work. And if you want to like to be part of the original composing team, let's say, then it's not only the music supervisor, but also the director, because many times here, directors and producers, they choose that they know who they want to work with. And depending on the kind of film, there's sometimes a very specific thing that it's, oh, this film, I need, let's say, someone like Berna or someone like Guy Amabis or someone. So you can normally the director will have this in his mind, what kind of composer or kind of music he or she wants for the film or series. So I guess there are basically these two ways.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, my colleague here can.
I wanted to
Move on
add
to Flavia.
something
Yeah.
that to keep in mind that uh, we are Brazilian market is special, really special. We are a great consumer of local songs. So 8% of all the deals that I close, it's with local songs. So it's a special market with a lot of rhythms. And I think you need to, for a French composer, you need to be deep inside our, maybe our, we are different than the other countries.
I think most people would agree with you there. So that's great. You have a great football team as well, but that's something else. But yeah, for sure. Obviously, I mean, there is a Latin element in French music, particularly down the south. There's kind of gitan element, which would probably work very well in Brazil, I'd have thought, because there's certain parallels, and obviously we have the Spanish influence coming over the Pyrenees and the Italian influence coming through the south of France, etc., etc. So there is a Latin color. And also, of course, Arabic influences, which are really rhythmic as well. But we all know that Brazil has a very, founded music culture, which is quite particular. What's interesting is to see how French composers can potentially enter into that market. Now, as I said earlier, apparently 60 to 70% of the music is local products and everything else. There's a lot of nostalgia in new productions here, and particularly Netflix, for example, with Kate Bush's, for example, the sort of huge success, which has come back, where we've gone back to old catalogue of international hits, and they've been injected into Netflix with a lot of success. Is that happening in Brazil as well at the same time? Juliana, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, definitely. I think in well, I work most of the times with novellas, which are, and adding to the previous question, I think what Flavia said is perfect, because it's a very unique format, I think, of an audiovisual production. So we do have this Brazilian way of making drama, this Brazilian way of making comedy. So perhaps studying a little bit of what this is the what language we carry in this in our productions in the matter of music. I think it's key to get in this market. But about that, I think I've been seeing this a lot. This trend of coming back with the old classics, both international and local. We've had just recently a major hit in our novellas, which was Pantanal. Um, it was a remake of an old success, and our soundtrack was basically around these old classics of the music that is made in the central west portion of Brazil. And I think it brings a whole new layer of connection with the audience. Um, you use their memories to engage with them in this conversation,
Right.
and I think it's very efficient way of getting closer to our audience, and it works just fine when we are doing a joke with with an old classic. I remember we had this novella that was about this family that became, it was a comedy. It was a family that got frozen after an accident in the sea uh, cent- 2 centuries ago. And they got unfrozen nowadays in the present time. So everything was very new for them. And we had all this comedy around this moment of them finding out what was going on. And little things like seeing a hamburger for the first time, or seeing a woman in short skirts or something. And we got that music in the soundtracks. um You Sexy Thing from Hot Chocolate,
Right.
which is a hit from the 70s, and it worked very well with those images
Of
of
course.
them looking at this, of the guy looking at this women, of the girl looking at the hamburger, of them looking at this whole new world, this modern world. And it's a joke that I think it's very frequently done in series like that, when we were talking about Stranger Things and others in streaming. And we are doing that also in novellas, which used to be a more traditional space for commercial soundtracks.
Right.
And I've been seeing directors more and more interested in making this little jokes or these connections with the public, with the audience, by taking whatever they have in their memories, in their affections, with songs from past decades.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that's pretty much parallel in many
Let, let,
markets. But yeah, tell me, Berna. Yes.
let me add something like about the French composers and the Brazilian styles.
Yeah.
You guys invented world music. You pretty much know how to 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 deal with different rhythms and like producing very well. I think like the Brazilian rhythms and French, we have a connection
Of course. Yeah.
since the 60s and 50s, blah blah blah. Also with Italians, like
Absolutely.
most of
As an
the
Englishman,
Roberto
yeah.
Carlos success was Italian versions. So
Right. I discovered world music in France when I came from England, because up until
yeah,
then I was only listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. You know.
England is very good with the Commonwealth music. You know, Jamaica and like
That's
King
right.
Sanade from Africa,
Yeah.
they deal very well with this bridge. But French are the champions of this mixture.
Right.
And also like adding for the music supervisor thing, like one of the most strategy success I've seen, it was that Seu Jorge movies from the Disney, just with Bowie songs.
Right.
Clearly, it's not a desire of the direction. It's a deal. It's something that was put on was put it on the table, and he bought it,
Right.
and it's very good.
Mm.
Just Bowie songs playing a Brazilian guy by a Brazilian guy in the middle of the ocean. This is like I think it's one of the most successful music supervisor thing I've seen
Mm.
in the past decades, like
Right.
the Spinners.
I adding a few things to that. One impression that I have, and I don't know if you share this with me, is that perhaps record labels haven't realized yet the power of their catalogs when it comes to soundtracks. We still struggle to make deals when it comes to catalogs because they are always um, working harder to get the deals for their releases. But I think we have this trend going on, this global trend going on with catalogs in audiovisual productions that have been extremely successful in bringing very good performances back to streaming services. Kate Bush's song is
Right.
an example of that.
It's, yeah,
It's the
it's
perfect example of that, I think.
yeah. Well,
So,
there's also Goo Goo Muck. That's the other one that's become a big success just recently in the Wednesday series, the Tim Burton series on Netflix. Goo Goo Muck is ready for a few more million sales, I think, because of that. And
But
effectively, you're right. There's a gold mine of old songs which can be interpreted. A good song, any composer or musician will tell you that a good song is a good song, however it's interpreted. And one of the things you can do, as exactly you said earlier, Berna, is take a song from David Bowie or somebody and play it on nose flute, mandolin, whatever you want, and it will be interesting. The melodic content and the lyrical contents are there. After there, it's a question of the emotion
uh,
that's put into the performance itself and how that performance is captured. But yeah, I think that was coming. It also applies a little bit to the Tarantino factor of this juxtaposition that you can make things humorous or provocative by having something which is very sad or very romantic in a very violent atmosphere or something like this. It makes it suddenly you look at it from the other side. So that's something which I mean think people can still carry on and exploit. Mario, do you have something to add to these subjects we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think one of the things that can be done to increase the French artists' share on Brazilian market is collaboration. So I think the collaboration film industry in Brazil, and Claudia, please correct me if I'm wrong, but film industry in Brazil is a case of success of international co-productions. So Brazilian production companies co-produce with France, with Korea, with UK, with Canada, lots of countries. I think this is
Spain.
the Spain, Portugal, so basically all over the world. And this is a I think this is the case that the musicians and the composers should inspire to increase their participation in both markets. So sometimes it's about a French composer that's working on a show that have a Brazilian theme or something, but the show is hosted in France. So he can like invite Berna or invite Gabriel or invite another Brazilian composer to join forces and to write music together and the other way around. So I think artists should look after artists to make their music, which is their gold, be visible to music supervisors, to producers, to Netflix, to anyone. So I think collaboration is one key. And another thing that I feel is like this is like everybody say this, but the music should be good. And but sometimes this is not so obvious. I was just reached out like a week ago by someone like cold email, and it was a composer, and he started his email saying like, I watched this show and I love this music, and I saw you made the music supervision for it. Please take a look at my songs and etc. So I heard it. I don't have a job for this. I don't have a project for this, but I immediately connected with a friend of mine who's a fashion film director. And I saw in this guy reel that he has like a lot of fashion films and nice tracks. And I just connected them. Like I'm not like winning anything. I'm not doing the music supervision for it. But if you put some time looking at what the other part is doing, probably you're gonna find some similarities and some connections, and it's just gonna work. For a show I'm doing now, the music supervision, we just licensed 10 tracks from a Swiss label, and I never heard of them, but the music was great and was pitched to me. I love the music, the director loved the music, all the team loved. So we licensed 10 tracks. I think this is how it.
Great. All right. Thanks. Now it's your turn, Gabriel. Do you have any thoughts about this? About how French writers can approach the Brazilian market?
Well, yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the things that were already said. I think collaboration is a great resource, a great tool to approach uh, the market and projects, different projects, because you know somebody that it's from Canada. We produce the music together. Okay, we produce the music together. He knows somebody that is working on a film. You know that that's in connection even with what Claudia said. That is networking. You know, it's like uh, it's very difficult to go somewhere if you stay closed in own on your own
Shell.
home and your
Yeah.
own cave. You know,
Of
you
course.
have to
Re-
go and reach
reach
and
out.
talk with
Reach
people
out.
and
Yeah.
try to make that network,
Mm.
play, talk, learn. You know, you have to be 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 you have to learn to listen
Mm.
also. Be like, oh, okay, oh, that's not, I'm gonna learn this. Learning this, I can reach another places, you know.
Yep.
I think it's I'm going to very
Yeah, it's
I
a
think
very valid comment. Yeah.
I'm very in line with our what's already been said, you know.
Sure.
It's like that. You have to work with people, you have to know people,
Yeah.
and you have to go producing, still producing, be creative, you
Right.
know. Oh, okay, I'm working with I'm exploring this new type of composition, you know. Okay, talk
Sure.
with somebody. You have to do that.
Right. Well, I
You
mean,
have to make your work connection with other people.
mm. As an Englishman, I've been living in France for 30 years, and the French market is quite introverted in its own particular way as well. One of the main is that it also, like Brazil, has its own character, its own musical style, its own style of composition. The lyrics are extremely important in French music, and the sentiment behind the lyrics is primary in most of the things that are done here up until the last few years, anyway. But what's quite interesting is the potential with as you said, it's a question of dialogue between different cultures. We now have Google Translate. Fantastic, great. We can any of us can write in Portuguese or in Brazilian Portuguese or Spanish or whatever we want. We can at least write. Would you say that it's worth, if you were a French composer and you had a show reel of your music, or for example, of extracts from publicity that you'd done or films that you'd worked on and things like this, as music supervisors, what would you expect to receive from a French composer approaching you to sort of enter into the market? Would you need a letter of introduction in your language, and maybe 10 minutes of music or half an hour of music or 30-second extracts? What would the ideal show reel be for you people? That interests me. Juliana.
Yeah, I'd say that in global, we do have this team of composers that I supervise, as I said. But we also have in a different area a library with lots of composers that are not directly hired by me, but they produce music for this library that we use for all our contents, not only in drama shows and variety shows, but also in sports and news. So this is, I believe personally that this path is a very good, very relevant way of getting closer to us, and we're getting to know the work of new composers because we can test something, we can listen to what they are producing, and if what they are producing is actually working with our contents. Um, so I believe the perhaps the most efficient way would be sure to receive an email with some kind of um, introduction about your work and a few tracks of your composition, and perhaps we can go from there to understanding, of course, the bureaucratic part of this. If this person is, I think Flavia can speak about this much more, much better than me.
Right.
But if this person is currently in some kind of association in Brazil and all that, but I do believe this is a great way of starting. You can actually see because I agree with Flavia when she says that it's a very unique industry here. We do have this behavior of consuming local content. I believe not only with music but also in audiovisual,
Mm.
um, and I think this understanding of these sounds, if they work with this format and our way of doing our audiovisual productions, is key in this process and is what we are gonna first have to test, I believe.
Right. I imagine, I mean, because of the language difference, obviously, the lyrical content isn't really that important. It's instrumental music principally that would be unless perhaps it's in English, for example, but being an international language. But you wouldn't want
Um, we
French
we
lyrics, would
do
they be
use
useful or not?
We do use, of course, a large amount of instrumental music, but we always have, when it comes to the commercial soundtracks of these shows, we always have a great interest in French music, actually. So,
Right.
and we do struggle with the dues. There is some difficulties in getting the authorizations needed to the sync part. Um, but we've had before, and I've seen a lot of directors with this desire to have French music with lyrics in French. Of course, we are talking about some kind of music, not only in French, but also in English or Spanish or whatever, that the bigger part of our Brazilian audience will not understand what is being said. The bigger part of Brazilian audience speaks only Portuguese. So we realize that, but music is about emotion. So
Absolutely.
we are able
and
to connect
and
with them.
we have the
Yeah.
power of the versions, the adaptation lyrics.
Of course.
Just so you know, one of the biggest song that we have in our catalog in Brazil, it's a version of a French song. It's O Meu Sangue Ferve por Você, that was singing by Sidney Magal. It's a version of Melody Lady from the composer. The composers are Jack Carell and Fred Meyer.
Right.
French. It's a French song.
Right.
So, and we have Jolly Taxi
Hmm.
that turns Road Taxi
Yes,
here
don't we
in
all?
Brazil. Yeah,
It was a hit in England
both
as
of
well.
the,
Yeah.
both old, but
Uh,
it's the power of the version.
yeah, of course. Of course.
Also, I've been working in a series right now. It's for Sony,
Mm.
which will be a global series, not a local series. It's talking in English, blah blah blah, and have a character. which is Marina Rui Barbosa. It's a cute girl here in Brazil, and she's a singer.
Right.
And I need to buy this universe around the series about what it's in the 70s, the early 70s. So I need to build something cool for her to sing, and I don't want her singing just Brazilian songs or English songs. So I put two French songs, but I've been working with not I didn't compose, but I've been working in my projects with the Universal Music. They have the best catalog because they are joining labels since the 50s, buying labels, buying
That's
labels,
right. Yeah.
and at the time, the agreements like the musician and the composer give everything to the record label, so they can trade right now
That's right.
as a catalog, like a and cost me like a cheap money,
Hmm.
cheap money, and I have a very good song, especially from if I'm doing like a I forgot the name in English where in the past when I do a film in the 70s, for instance, like I can find like very good French songs, funk songs, British songs made in the 70s with all that flavor,
Right.
and I can put and people realize, oh, I buy it, I
Right.
buy it. It's not a fake; it's a real thing.
Okay. All right. That interestingly, I work sometimes with Universal Publishing, and they're telling me they have three people down in the basement with computers, which are scanning the airwaves constantly to see what music is played around the planet. And they explained to me that if some Australian farmer broadcasts on his local radio a piece of music that is published by Universal, for 5 seconds, they will recognize it immediately.
Wow.
Yeah. And even if it's turned backwards and it's played backwards, even then they will still recognize that it's part of their music. What about that? Backwards for 5 seconds, and the computer's got it straight away. I mean, one of the interesting things that one of our partners that couldn't be here today because she's unfortunately ill, Patricia, she sent some answers to some of the questions. And one of the interesting things she mentioned was about metadata and the importance of putting metadata behind the files that you actually supply to
Yeah.
editors and to broadcasters, et cetera, in terms of your writing credits, in terms of the partition, what percentage goes to what person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's sadly very ignored, but it's obviously something which is going to be very relevant in the future as things get more and more computerized.
Can- you guys have a great system, like a great association,
Yeah,
and like really know how to scam, and I've been discussing this like for the last since the beginning of MP3.
right,
We have the knowledge, man. We have the technology
of course.
to put the metadata it's just a matter of organization. We can like the movies. The
That's it.
movies cannot go on the air without a music cue sheet.
That's right.
So an MP3 or something on Spotify must have the same agreement. Like, oh no,
Absolutely.
you just put the MP3 here. If you have all the metadata,
Yeah.
fill it.
Yeah, well, that's a really important part of the mastering stage, which has sadly been ignored for many years. There's been a big hole in the market now where a lot of product has gone out with no metadata at all, or very insufficient things. And it's true that in France the system's getting, as in America, it's getting more sophisticated in terms of coding. So both authors and producers and publishers are protected in the correct manner. But that's something that will certainly develop in the years to come, I'm sure.
We
Right.
have the technology.
Yeah.
We have the technology. Netflix, they want you to manipulate the numbers.
Right.
So they pay for me for pro rata.
Hmm.
So okay, if a guy if a guy see 3 minutes of the first episode of a series,
That's
they
right.
must pay for just 3 minutes. But they want the buyout. Why? Because they for mask their numbers.
Right.
They assume if a guy in Estonia see 3 or 5 minutes of the first episode,
Hmm.
they see all the series.
Oh yeah, of course.
Just to fake to the investors.
Of course. Well,
It's
a
a
whole
shame.
a whole career can be made from one song on Netflix. And there's a few examples of groups that are touring the planet at the moment who just True Detective, I think it is, the group that did were really unknown, and they did the title music for True Detective, and they're now world touring constantly, non-stop, because that's all it takes. So people have become aware of the value, I think, of actually having success on a format like Netflix, and it's like flies, if you want, around a certain matter that we don't want to talk about, but there's just more and more of them around it because everyone knows that's where the bread is buttered, if you want, that's where the money is. And so there's more and more people that are trying to focus in on that. And because the music business itself, I'm sure it's the same in Brazil as it is in England or in France, is fragmented in so many different ways that people are looking at different ways of surviving. A lot of people that used to make their money from selling records, because record sales used to generate a lot of funds to create new productions, they don't sell in the same way. The streaming formats have seriously reduced the revenue for the vast majority of musicians, that more and more composers are looking for a place in the field that you people are in, actually, in terms of placing music with images and writing music for films, etc., etc. It's exciting times for everybody, and ferociously competitive. But the results will obviously be, in the end, a better quality of product, I think. Maybe I should pass the microphone to a few people in the house that might want to ask questions. Anybody? Des questions? No? No. No questions? None at all? Not at all. Okay, nobody wants to ask any questions. My Brazilian's too good for them, I think. That's what it is. All right,
People.
Yeah, okay. Right, I can throw another one at you guys. Is there any particular trend in music at the moment in Brazil? I mean, you've said that local music, would you agree that there's a nostalgic trend within music at the moment, or are we moving more into more contemporary field or orchestral fields or something like this? Is there a particular tendency that people should be aware of? Should we go around the loop again? Should we, Claudia?
No, it's a pisadinha. They always doing this mix with the old country Brazilian music with beats and something. They try to be more trendy.
Right.
And every summer we have a new kind of rhythm style.
Right.
But all the same resource.
What's the fantastic Brazilian instrument? Berimbau. That's it, isn't it? The thing that you put on your stomach. There's a fantastic Brazilian percussionist in Paris, Edmundo Carneiro. He's a master at that instrument. He's fantastic. He can find a piece of percussion for any style of music. He's fantastic. It's great. There's some very good Edmundo Carneiro, and he's an excellent musician, really, really good. And there's some very good Brazilian jazz musicians in Paris as well since a long time. But anyway, okay. Well, I don't know how.
I think Brazil has a tradition of exporting.
Yeah.
Musicians and especially percussionists. There's a lot of them.
Of course,
They're
yeah.
Really, really.
Yeah, we associate that, and of course brass as well, and things like this. There's a big place for Cuban music in France, but since the Buena Vista Social Club that opened up an enormous door for Cuban music in France, but now we're waiting for the same thing from Brazil. But I hope the dialogue continues anyway. So, okay, still no questions? No, well, I think that's about it, really. I think we've covered so much. I'd like to thank you all for your contributions. It's been very, very interesting talking to you all. I think everybody here can potentially find your contacts through the site and get in touch with you. There's a mixture of people in the room. Some are publishers, as I said. Some are composers themselves. Some are music supervisors. But they have all your links and your contacts through the Eiffel structure, and they will perhaps get in touch with you, hopefully, and create something together.
Thank you for the invite, and it was a pleasure. Sorry.
It was indeed.
No,
yes.
no. Go on, Claudia. Go on, please.
I'm sorry, Mario?
No, I was just thanking and saying it was a pleasure and wishing good luck to everybody there.
Great.
Sorry, Mario, you can go.
All right. Well, thank you very much. An excellent video, very entertaining.
Something I would just like to add is like I don't know. I really think this kind of conference should happen more, and that we must have contact, not just creatively speaking, like as artists and collaborators and publishers and all,
Mm.
but in Brazil, particularly in this moment, we're trying to establish the best practices. So all the labels, publishers, networks, production companies, we are all struggling trying to find what would be reasonable terms for deals and stuff like that. So I think if we can be closer with your labels, publishers, artists, but in terms of business, like
Of course.
what are the agreements in France? What are the agreements in Brazil? And especially Brazil and France, we have similar structure in terms of law. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that our copyright law came from French models with Victor Hugo and all. So
Right.
I think we would be stronger defending composers' rights if we have more cases to show to Netflix, Disney,
Yes.
Amazon, etc. So I know you are more advanced in this than we are in Brazil. So basically, what I see in Brazil is like I go with my client and say, no good composer will accept this deal. So if they say, okay, so call Berna, he's not gonna do it. So call Antonio Pinto, he's not gonna do it. But this is limited, and this put a lot of pressure on the shoulders of the composers. Sometimes they have to be without a job and to refuse a job, like on the smarter action to try to save the market. And I think this needs to come from up. So if you can provoke something like Sustain, talk to UBC, talk to Abramos, and also the publishers talk to their association between France and Brazil. And we can like say, we work like France, and France say we work like Brazil, so we can be stronger when dealing. And at the same time, I think it will help like production companies, and it will help unnecessary discussions with networks and Netflix and etc. Because the production companies suffer a lot. Sometimes they have like to wait until the clearance of a music, and they have to shoot in a month, and they need to delay the shooting or change the scenes because of that. So I don't know. I think we should do more of this, like focus on this issue.
But one thing to add, Mario, like in terms of budget, like sometimes a production that doesn't reserve 1% for the music. Should be 10. Okay, the eyes the king for audio visuals, but like music is very important. And I'm not talking about share 50-50. I'm talking about give me 5%, give me 10%. But we don't have it. We have one at least.
Yeah, one thing that I learned is that doesn't matter how much money you have for your budget, it will always be less than what you need. So, and all the post production things,
Yeah,
since they are
tough
less,
as you said.
people tend to spend money here and then okay, we'll see how we'll deal with this in the future, and then you don't have how to get more money. So I understand what you say, but and I agree, and believe me, we struggle with this as well, and sometimes it's just not possible.
I can.
And
I
but,
can.
but you're right, we should. And since I worked at Netflix, because it's been more than 2 years that I left already and I'm back to production, I learned this. This is was something that Netflix, for instance, they when we've added the budgets for the series, the films, etc., you have to leave at least this amount of money for the soundtrack. So we push the producers from that side to so so I learned the importance of this, and since that I fight for the music in the budget of the projects that I do.
I can maybe add two English expressions to this. One would be for the Netflix people, which would be you get what you pay for. You know, basically that's one English expression. And for the composers, I'd add another one, which is the best deal you can make is the deal you can afford to lose. So that's a good one to think about.
That's a great one.
That's a really good one. So hang on to those two expressions, and they'll maybe improve the business somewhat. You know.
And also, I think on the music side and on the sound side, we also have to try to mirror what you have in France, because I know like SACEM, there's a lot of subsidies for producing music.
That's right. Yes,
for
indeed.
producing music for films. I never had access to this money, but I heard that it exists. So if you correct me if I'm wrong, but
France has the biggest per capita expenditure on culture in the world because it's one of their major exports of the country. That's why I chose to live in France, in fact, was because of the importance of culture and music and arts in general within French society. It's one of their big advantages. And SACEM is a typical institution, but there's other ones that also finance musical productions, Adami and things like this. There's other structures which will put money down to produce music, which is something which is developed and discussed and argued about.
I think this kind of actions where you have like a composer have his salary, his payment, and his share on the budget, but he also have the power to raise more money for the production. This gives a lot of power to the labels, publishers, composers to be part of some, let's see, an independent field, like not a Netflix, not an Amazon project, but you know, if I have Berna Ceppas in my team, I could apply for money in SACEM or in our case in ECAD. And so, and he's gonna keep his ownership of the music. He's gonna be the master owner. He's gonna be the publisher, stuff like that. So money always change the power balance. So I think we can learn with France how to work better with our associations and PROs and etc.
Yeah, I mean, in France, it's a reflection of the political stability since the revolution, if you want. It's you can go back that far in terms of its socialist ideals, and I know Brazil's been in a certain turmoil in that particular respect recently. So hopefully, the future will be brighter for you all. You know, we've been following it closely, but I have anyway. So here you go.
No, we had a point like we need a politician. We need someone in the House of Lords, you know, fighting for us.
Yeah, well, the minister of culture. We've had a couple good examples in France of ministers of culture. They've been real personalities, but they fought very hard to defend musicians and creation and music and musical rights. And I know American and English composers who've signed with SACEM because they prefer the way SACEM deal with their royalties to PRS or MCBS in America or whatever, because it's a very structured society that's very efficient. And obviously, where the percentages that SACEM used to take were quite excessive at one point, now because of computer technology and the gestion, as they say, the way that your rights are managed around the world has become much more efficient and much more rapid and much more transparent. It's become even more efficient. But yeah, it's a primary thing for every composer is to get, and now you can put your title down on the internet the moment you've composed it. Before you had to write a score to put your piece of music into rights protection. Now you can just send an MP3 in, and you're protected straight away. It's done within 24 hours. You know, so that's really positive side of working in France for sure. But I hope the Brazilian system falls in line with that. Right then, are we done?
Thanks a lot, dude.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're like, hi, I'm back here. I didn't get a camera. I got a really bum deal. Yeah, I did makeup and everything. You know, I'm joking. Yes, all right. Any questions yet? Still none? No. No, the French are quiet. Sorry, I said.
Okay.
All right, the English keep waffling, but the French go quiet. It's all right. So it's usual thing. Wait for the football match on Saturday. It'll be that'll be a different story.
Yeah, wait for the final, huh?
We won't talk football. It's not allowed. No. All right. Okay. Well, it's been very nice talking to you all. Thank you so much for your contributions. Anyone got a final word to say? No?
No, so thank you. This kind of initiative, it's really important to us here in Brazil,
Great.
this connection with the other countries. And I'm super happy to be here and to be with my friends, Juliana, Mario, Claudia, Berna, Gabriel.
Great.
And thank you so much for the invitation. And let's do more
Great.
this kind of thing.
Great. Oh, well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for being here and all your contributions.
Thank you.
much.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Nice to see you people. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Falou, galera. Prazerão aí.
Valeu.
Falou, valeu
Beijo,
demais, hein,
beijo,
gente.
beijo. Prazer.
Tchau, tchau.